what you know about purification to save the heart of a nation. Let burn a darkened world, bringing light to a darkened world. Natural law, just wisdom and love, facing truth below as above. Let burn a darkened world, let burn a darkened world.
Welcome to the Affirm Life Daily podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Mitchell. And as always, I'd like to invite you to visit the website, affirmlifedaily.com, and follow us on social media at Affirm Life Daily. Tonight, I have a very special guest. I have Nate Kap from the CubbyWhole. He is a wealth of knowledge on many, many things. So I'm going to give a brief intro before I let him kind of take over. And we're going to dive deep into some really fascinating topics that will shed a lot of light on all things kind of related to astrology, Egyptian mythos, Zodiac signs, all that good stuff. So Nate Kap is an independent researcher, symbolist, I hope I'm saying that right, public speaker, founder of the CubbyWhole website, host and editor of the CubbyWhole podcast and Outcasting podcast, with specialized skills in graphics and esoteric art. He is a researcher and teacher of natural law, morality, the occult, consciousness, mystery traditions, including esoteric Freemasonry, plus mind control, allegories, green language, and much more. So you kind of get in the picture. He is a wealth of information. His goal is to de-occult knowledge for the layman. So make it plain and simple so that everyone can understand is basically what he's trying to do. And that's in order to help reduce slavery, align in truth, and generate freedom.
That's what it's all about.
Yes, it's all about truth and freedom. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk with you about these topics. Is there anything that you wanted to say in addition to what I mentioned? And also let people know where they can find you.
Well, CubbyWhole.com is where you can find me. And that's with a W. Also, thank you so much for having me on your show. I think it's wonderful to see more people who are new faces getting on the front line of this war that we're all in and teaching natural law. This is one of the best ways that anybody can actually, really get their skin in the game. And so I appreciate that about you. And, this is what I'm all about. I'm really just trying to reduce as much ignorance within myself, first and foremost, and then try to inspire other people to get out of their ignorance. So that way we can move in a direction of, evolution and freedom. So I'm really, really excited to talk about this type of information that we're going to talk about today, because I feel like so many people have no idea, for one, what this really is. And I will say that there are necessary prerequisites that are going to have to be studied very deeply in order to really understand and also appreciate what it is that I'm putting on the table. So that's why CubbyWhole.com, the podcast that you can find on there, it is such a wealth of knowledge, and it's something that I do with Brandon and Douglas Martin, and I highly, highly recommend anybody, really take their time, go through the information chronologically, and that way you'll have, a better learning and understanding, and again, an appreciation. So.
Yes. Yeah, I did start going through some of it, and it's a lot of information, and I do recommend going in order because it, definitely builds on itself the kind of way that Mark Passio's podcast builds on itself. So, but it's some great information. So you're going to kind of give us some of the intro version, and that'll lead us into the first question, which is, what is ancient Egyptian mythos, and why is it important? Why should we care about this?
This is a really, really important question. Very great question. And there is so much that goes into this answer, but I'll do my best to, really simplify it so people have some kind of a decent understanding of what this is really all about, and how vital it is to look into this information a lot further and really allow yourself to go into the journey of discovering what this really means, because we're all part of, this whole celestial system, dealing with the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets. So the ancient Egyptian mythos is essentially the, mystical stories or mythical stories that are, regarding creation or nature. And the science that is stored within them is basically laying out everything to do with the cycles of these celestial bodies. Okay. Again, like the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets. And it's really important to understand that these celestial bodies are, the science is stored within form. And that means, geometry or sacred geometry, like the Great Pyramids of Giza, really all the pyramids around the world. But when we're talking about the ancient Egyptian mythos, it's important to understand the form of the pyramid, the way the pyramids are laid out. That's a language. It's a sacred geometry language. And, so this is dealing with symbolism, and it's dealing with, the myths, the stories that are surrounding it. And also this incredible, great science of the ancient Egyptian mythos is preserving our soul's journey to understand life, death, and rebirth. And this is something that I talked about in my newest Earth Brain presentations symbolically. But this is also dealing with, judgment and the afterlife. And right away, a lot of people think, this is a literal thing. And that's where a lot of the degradation in the science has completely took everybody away from the spiritual realm and, put people into this literalism, which is materialism. And so, and this is such a big deal. And this is what I'm trying to explain again in my Earth Brain 3 presentation. It's so important that people really look deeply into this, because we have to understand that these celestial bodies are our teachers. They've always been our teachers. These are the true extraterrestrials. These are the ones that we should be paying attention to, because these are the ones that are giving the information. They're bringing the information to us. We're receiving that information as terrestrial beings, and therefore we're inspired by the science of these beings, because they are beings. And we're using that to learn who we truly are and why we're really here. And so the ancient Egyptian mythos is also referred to the ancient Egyptian hero cults. And, I think it's fair to, break down what I mean by hero cults, because I think anybody understands that hero means the savior, right?
Right.
Very simply, hero means savior. And cults, we have to understand that culture is something that is so misunderstood in this world. And but we have to understand the difference between modern cults and ancient cults, especially when we're dealing with the ancient Egyptian cults, because the ancient Egyptian cults are nature cults. These are cults. These are cultures that have cultivated the science of nature. They've grown these sciences. They've developed these sciences in order to help us as a human species understand our place in this world, to help us understand how to survive, but also how to develop spiritually.
Continue to evolve.
That's right. And how to connect with nature, how
This
to
is really
reconnect.
important because I feel like the word cult by itself has such a negative, both connotative and denotative meaning now. I don't ever think of the word cult and think of cultivation of something positive.
Yeah.
So this is really striking a lot of nerves for me. Like, this is deep.
Oh, it is. We are dealing with our ancestors from a very ancient world. These people cared so much that they preserved this information for progeny and posterity, for future generations to know how to restore this science within. And so what I want to do now is I want people to understand I'm really putting a lot of very deep knowledge on the table, but I'm trying to condense it so in hopes that people are inspired to go learn all the in between, because that's the real journey, to reconnect with these great cosmic teachers, with these great cosmic mother and father, if you will. This is,
really think of them as conscious beings.
Yeah, these are absolute conscious beings. And so, because we're all connected to it,
Yes.
they're there to teach beings who have the capacity to, understand this science. And so, the way that I would like to, so I'm going to read this slide, and okay. I'm going to do my best to, simplify it, but, just really try to make it make sense. That's really all I care, is trying to make sense of this information, because, it's so packed. It's so packed. And I think that it will resonate with you because it's in you. All this information is in each and every one of us. So,
within, so without.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the totemic systems of mythological and eschatological veneration is the ancient Egyptian hero cults. Sorry.
Can you just
Go ahead.
explain what eschatological means, please? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, yeah, and we're going to talk about this later, but the eschatological is eschatology, which means final things. Okay. So this is about the end times, right? But okay. We're going to get into that at the very end of this whole show, because, well, if we have time, but because there's a lot to say. So the ancient Egyptian hero cults are totemic systems of mythological and eschatological veneration, and so the word totemic is such a huge word, because you're dealing with the kinship of cultures. You're dealing with kinship in the sense that people understood certain aspects of nature together. So it was like a collective consciousness of the surroundings of the self within nature. So people understood things in a way that was together. They were united. And so when you think of the sun or the moon or the stars, you can look at this as these are totemic people who understood these celestial bodies in nature, and they were connected through them. So, and then also think of, totem poles. So totemic is totem. Okay, so this is the totem. This is about totemic sociology, because the totemic people, if you've ever seen a totem pole, you'll see that there are animal types, or zoo types, and each animal, typically it starts from a reptile and then goes up the pole to a bird head, and that's really important when you correspond that to our triune brain, the 3-in-1 brain, the R complex, the mammalian brain or limbic system, and then the neocortex, the newer part of the brain. And this would be considered bird. This would be considered, the mammal in between, and then the R complex would be considered, the alligator or reptile of some sort.
Okay.
Or crocodile brain. There's a few different names for the R complex. So that's really important to understand. Now, I'm going to get into mythological and eschatological later on, but the veneration, these people, these totemic people, they venerated they venerated something with reverence that was higher than them, that was pure, something that was divine. And that means that these celestial bodies brought information. You could look at it this way. We're the receivers. And so we are venerating, meaning that we have an appreciation for a great, deep appreciation for these beings that are giving us this information. Mm-hmm. And so venerating means putting all your energy into something because you appreciate it, because it has great divinity, because it's bigger than you, because it is helping you in some way. It's helping you develop as a human being. Okay? So that's really important. Now, each of the 3 phases, so there's 3 phases that have happened in the last at least 300,000 years. And I would say it goes back a lot further than that. But, a lot of people will completely negate what I'm going to say. And that's okay, because most people are stuck in a very small box of 2,000 or maybe 6,000 if we're lucky. Most people are in a 2,000-year box, but 6,000 years overall. But the further we go back and start to see the human story, the more we start to realize that we've just been evolving as a human species for a very long time. And so the stellar phase, the star phase is so important to really, really dive deeply into. And the reason is because this is the first totemic hero cult. Okay. And the stellar cult. Yeah. Okay. The stellar mythos, if you want to call it that. This cult lasted, and I noticed that there's a kind of a typo here, but it lasted from around 150,000 years ago to 300,000 years ago. And you can say it that way. That's improper English. I'm realizing that right now, but it should say from around 300,000 years ago to 150,000 years ago. But either way, a long time ago. Right. And this is the first totemic hero cult, and I truly believe these are the original Giza pyramid builders. And the reason I believe this is because if we study, these ancient mystery traditions, and we're going to get to that later on, but if we study the mystery traditions and we study the science, the archaeology, we study the tool making, we study the symbolism, we can know, and also study the epochs of time between glacial periods, because, we have to understand we're going through cycles. There's day cycles, there's lunar cycles, there's solar cycles, there's galaxy cycles. There's so many different cycles that are going on, and there's an ice age cycles. Believe it or not, most people want to say there's only one ice age. No, there's I'm standing on firmly on the ground that we do go through ice age cycles, and that's really, really important to understand, because these ice ages are where we are learning that there is a great year cycle. And so this great year cycle is the roughly around 26,000 year cycle. And so this is just a really, really important aspect here, because the Earth's pole is going through going through a wobble. The ecliptic, the obliquity of the ecliptic is wobbling through these North Pole stars. And the North Pole stars, the ones that we know about, are the ones that we're in right now. This is dealing with Polaris. That's the pole star now, which is connected to the Little Bear constellation.
Okay.
So this is where, if you ever go outside and really pay attention, the constellation that never sets below the horizon in the northern hemisphere is the Little Bear, or the Little Dipper, or Ursa Minor, however you want to call it. And that they're all very important names. But the reason that this is important, because this is symbolically the most high. Okay? So that means that, if you were to look at this constellation, and just watch all the stars spin around it through it's some kind of technology where it can trace the stars, like a star tracing picture. This can show you how all the stars are going around this one constellation, or this one star. So that's really, really important. And because of this is what the ancient stellar people, and this is coming from Africa. This is coming from ancient Egypt, hundreds of thousands of years ago. And so they understood how important it was to store all the information, all things seven, within this Little Bear constellation. And so, because this is the constellation that never set, and so all things seven equate to that Little Bear, all the stars.
Okay.
And I know I'm saying a lot, so please, feel free to interject or ask any questions, because I'm trying to. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So they understood how important that was. Okay. They understood how important it was to maintain the science of the Earth's wobble every 26,000 years or so, to help us understand glacial periods. And that's huge. That's a really big deal. And therefore they built pyramids to help, maintain that information, to preserve that information. And I would say that they took thousands of years to build those pyramids. And that's really hard for people these days to even wrap their head around, because most people have a TikTok mind. Everything's speed. Everything is, got to be done quick. Everything's got to be done now. And it's like, no. These people understood how important it was. They had care. They cultivated care.
True care.
At the deepest agape level possible.
Yeah.
And so the priest class of that time, wanted to bring that information into something they basically brought down the science of the stellar into the lunar. So the light that you're seeing on the crescent is the light of the stellar. Symbolically. And this is about understanding. This is the spiritual, not the literal. Right. This is the spiritual. It's about understanding that light came from the Most High. And so from around 150,000 years ago to 100,000 years ago, the stellar priest class preserved this stellar science in the elemental Tot, the god Tot.
Okay.
Which is the moon. It's a moon god, and this is originally Thoth. So this is very ancient.
Very
and
ancient.
So then what happens? And there's so much that goes into that alone.
Right.
But just for the sake of this show, the light of the stellar there was a transition. And I would say there's two things happening. One is that we're evolving as a species, we're evolving the mythos, we're evolving the sciences. And so it only makes sense that the light of the moon ends up also becoming the light of the sun, because literally it is the light of the sun. The moon is the light of the sun. And so that's where we get in trouble also, because we get into this literalism. This is where literalism starts to come into play, where we get too literal. And that's a whole nother story, okay, because we're going into materialism. So from around 100,000 years ago to the current era is the solar mythos, or the solar cult. And so you and I and everybody else are in this big umbrella of the solar cult. Whether we understand that or know that or not, that's actually it's what's happening, because this is something that's been taking place for over 100,000 years, and so it's just in us. We're part of it, and that's okay. It's okay, but it's not okay. It's okay because that's just the way that it happened, but it's not okay when we start to become conscious of it, because now we're realizing we've went too far into materialism as a result, and that's for a whole nother show. So this is the solar mythos, the solar cult is the official eschatology. This is where the official eschatology begins, and then it becomes corrupt over 40,000 years ago. And so we're feeling the corruption now. We have been in a perpetual corruption ever since then. So I would just say, in the cult of Osiris is where they started to perfect their eschatology. The ancient Egyptians and the solar people, the spiritual solar people, and then once it becomes corrupt, that's where we start to lose all this knowledge, and things get super corrupt, and now we're in a world of materialism as a result. So
materialism and slavery. Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of leads us into the next question, because that kind of leads us into the Astro-Theology. So you've kind of already explained it, but if you want to just kind of give a little streamlined definition of Astro-Theology, and then talk about how it influences our lives and our beliefs in the present.
Oh, you're talking about the? Sorry, I was doing something. I completely missed that first part of what you asked.
I was going to say, you've kind of started to explain it already as far as what Astro-Theology is.
Right.
But if you want to kind of just give there you go. Yeah. And just kind of explain how it is impacting our current lives and our current belief systems.
Yeah. So this is, so this is Astro-Theology is essentially what the ancient Egyptian mythos is, but it is a different study. on its own. So I think it's really important to understand, to break down this word astro-theology, because astro means star, and theology means the study of God or study of gods, because we have to understand that when we think of God, when we think of the Creator, we can look at the Creator symbolically. Let's say, just say like a circle, or let's say a pie, right? And in order to understand that pie, the whole pie, we have to understand it in parts, right? And each part you could look at as a god, and so therefore gods plural. So to understand the gods is to understand God, right?
God.
Yeah. And and for people who don't like the name God, you could say the whole circle is source. And if you want to understand source, just understand aspects of nature or aspects of the celestial bodies of the universe, or parts of nature. I mean, you could say it in so many different ways, but I think, going right to the word God, I'm comfortable with that. A lot of people are not. So, basically, and this is the one of the definitions that I found: study of the gods associated with the celestial bodies in the heavens. And so, all the constellations that we see in the night sky, they all have basically a story associated with them, a myth. So, and each one of these myths are basically narratives that we can tap into, that we can learn through oral tradition that's passed down, or written tradition that's passed down. And we can learn about each one of these constellations, and we're going to get into this with the Zodiac, but we can learn that these constellations have sciences that can help us understand who we are through, allegory, because that's what it's about. It's all allegorical. It's animistic. And so this is a huge, astro-theology is a huge study of the celestial bodies. Again, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets. And, think about Jesus Christ, whether anybody believes that Jesus Christ was a real being or not, I don't ever get into that debate. The only thing that matters truly is that Jesus Christ, when looked at as an archetype, and what Jesus Christ represents, and there's many different things that Jesus Christ represents, but the one thing that Jesus represents in the celestial bodies is the sun. And so this is the light of the world. The sun is the light of the world. And that's one of the things that, Jesus Christ represents.
Right.
This is the Savior. The sun is our Savior every single day, because obviously we need warmth, we need nutrients, we need things to grow so we can eat.
Life. Yes.
Yeah. It's very simple, very simple, straightforward mathematics.
Right.
It's common sense. So this astro-theology helps us understand how to, know what we're really here to do. Again, just like the ancient Egyptian mythos. Because, see, the ancient Egyptian mythos, I just want to also be clear, when we're talking about the ancient Egyptian mythos, we're talking about northern Africa, and especially ancient Egypt. But when we're talking about astro-theology, this goes all over the whole world. This is universal. And really, so is the science of the ancient Egyptian mythos. But the point is, we have to understand these and how to differentiate them. And also I threw together this slide pretty quick, but I was just showing the planets aligned, from Saturn to the sun, and that's alchemical. Going from Saturn to the sun is, the Saturn is, this is part of understanding the Elohim and the wanderers, the seven wanderers, and so the planets, the moon, and the sun, and the planets that we can actually see with the naked eye, but also, this is alchemical, going from base metals to gold, being from Saturn to the sun. And that's part of understanding astro-theology, because it's about understanding the science of the planets and the sun and the moon and the stars in relationship to us, and that's what alchemy helps us do. I also threw in some other ancient Egyptian deities, Osiris, Set, and Ma'at. And, these elemental powers are just helping us understand ourselves in nature. And, Osiris is just, it's a super huge topic. It really just makes anything in the modern world looks so tiny, yet it makes more sense because it's getting back to pure forms. So it's a huge topic, but it's a very beautiful unfoldment, especially of natural law, and we're going to get into that. So if you wanted to add in anything or have any questions, I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Well, yeah, you can go to the next slide, because I was just going to say, when you were talking about the stories, there's stories related to each one. Yeah, I was going to say that story, I'm sure, relates to the Zodiac signs and the stories that we have about the traits of each, the traits that the people have of each sign. Right.
Yeah, and that's, so that goes right into the astrology. And, the Zodiac, this is a very, very ancient tracing board. And by tracing board, I'm talking about the art of tracing the self out in nature. And so to trace out all the information that you're seeing here in order to understand yourself, in order to, or the self, and to understand each other and how to essentially take care of ourselves, develop, and learn how to survive with nature, not against nature.
As part of nature.
Yeah, as part of nature, yeah. And so the Zodiac is referred to as the wheel of animals. And so this is the board of zoo types. So each house contains a zoo type, and even though there's some, human beings in there, it's important to understand all the houses as zoo types. And it's really, really important that we understand that this whole wheel, it goes beyond astronomy, astrology, and astro-theology, because this is psychology. This is part of understanding totemism. Because when you're looking at this wheel, it has, again, this is what I was talking about earlier, God and gods. This is a pie chart. Look at it as a pie chart. And you're trying to understand each piece of the pie in order to understand the whole. That's what understanding really means. Because how can you understand the whole without understanding each piece?
Individual part, right.
Right? And so, astronomy, just real quick, I just wanted to, explain these three, astronomy, astrology, and astro-theology. So astronomy is, the study of the stars, the planets, the sun, all celestial bodies, the whole universe. Very simple, right? And astrology is about understanding your place of birth, the moment that you're born into the terrestrial, when you have your first breath of life, or breath of air, spirit, if you will. This is about understanding that as soon as you are birthed into this world, you are aligned. Where are you aligned to? What are you aligned to? Where was Jupiter when you were born? Where was Mars when you were born? Or what sign was the sun in when you were born? Or
like your spiritual connection to astronomy.
That's right. That's right. And so, astrology is, I think it can be fun for people. There's a fun aspect to it, and I'm not against that, because that can actually get people seeing their connection in nature in a very exoteric way. But in an esoteric way, if you really look a lot deeper and, study astro-theology, again, the study of the gods through the stars, through the heavens, this is where you're going to really take a deeper dive and understand each one of these houses. So each piece of the zodiac is a house. So all 12 houses. And that number 12 is a big, big deal, because number 12 is dealing with the greater mysteries, which is solar. So this is dealing with the solar cult, especially. And so each house is dealing with, a part of the seasons. Okay, so you have your, winter at the bottom left, spring at the top left. You have your summer top right, and then your fall in the bottom right. And it's very important to really pay attention to the words that are being used. Pay attention to each house as a correspondence to a mystery tradition, which we're going to get into. So, you can just pull from, each one of these houses is a book. So you can just keep pulling from it. There's so much information. Because why? You're dealing with cosmic bodies. You're dealing with science in nature. You're dealing with time periods. I mean, it's a timekeeper. That's what it is. And think about this too. The zodiac is aligned to the one great year cycle. So the great year cycle is, like I said, roughly, 26,000 years. And you could say, I've heard different numbers, 25,868 years to be a little bit more precise. And then you have each house that we go through, because remember, 25,868 divided by 12, I think it's around 2,160 years each house. And those numbers are important. We got to find our care to care about those numbers, because this is about
into a different house now, right?
Yep. And we're going into Aquarius. And so, we're going from Pisces into Aquarius. And so, just the cycles that I think are very important to pay attention to: the day cycle, which is a solar cycle; the month cycle, which is a month cycle, which is dealing with the lunar, the moon; the annual cycle, which is dealing with the sun; and then the great year cycle, which is dealing with the glacial periods, which is dealing with the Earth's pole going through all 7 North Pole stars, and over a 26,000 year period. So this is such a huge science of tracing out the self to understand when to plant and when to harvest, to understand, agriculture, to understand fertility, to understand the soul's journey going through the underworld, the fall through, the winter is the underworld. That's akin to the underworld. And then springing up as this is why we have so much energy in the spring. Everything does, because we're rising with the sun coming from the cold winter south. And so there's a lot that goes into that. So please feel free.
Very interesting. Like, I can talk about this all day, but I'm gonna keep us moving. So I kind of understand a much more the deeper meanings of the zodiac rather than just, I'm a Gemini because I'm a Gemini and I love to, so and so and so. So it's much deeper than, like you said, the exoteric that most of us think of. So that's something that definitely I think we all need to look into more. Because like you said, we need that deeper understanding, because the more we can become connected with this type of knowledge, can connect us with the source energy.
Right. That's right.
And allow us to deepen our sense of care because we have a greater understanding. So no, that's powerful stuff. So tell me, like, as far as the mystery traditions, how does that play a role in all of this, and how does it play a role in our modern society?
So let's go here. This is a really great question, and I could talk about any one of these slides forever and ever, but I'm trying to condense it in a way, and this is a beautiful science of condensing and being eclectic. So when we're talking about the mystery traditions, this refers to knowledge or teachings meant for a small, specialized group of people, often requiring advanced understanding or special training. It is often hidden or secret and needs deeper insight to fully understand. Okay, so what we're looking at here, and sorry, I was having trouble reading that. The font was so small for me. But when we're looking at the overhead view of this image, I want people to think about King Arthur's round table, okay? Because that's a very powerful symbol. And that's what it is. This is an archetype. It's a table. And so when we're looking at this table, this overhead view, the cup, the grail, if you will, or the chalice, is sitting right in the middle. That is truth. That's analogous to truth. Truth is central. Truth is light. And truth is that which is. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get as close to truth as possible if you're a truth seeker. Yes. If you really, truly, if you're honest with yourself and you really want to understand the truth and you want to understand the world that you live in, you have to understand that it's going to take eclecticism. And so that means being eclectic in your research. That means looking at all these major religions that you see here that are basically dominating the whole mind of people, the collective mindset of people, for the most part, not everybody. Right. But these major religions, we have to understand we have to differentiate first also. The teachings I want to make sure I'm very clear on this. The teachings that you see, or the teachings that are associated with these major religions that you see on the outside, they are so valuable. Whether anyone believes that or not, it doesn't matter. They're valuable. It's the way that they're taught and the way that they're the way that they're pushed into, the way that they're indoctrinated into us for control purposes. That's where they cross the line in under natural law. This is then it becomes deceptive. It becomes an absolute mess, and that's the world that we see ourselves in right now.
Using it for manipulation and control rather than truth and freedom.
Yeah, rather than trying to elevate.
And there's so much beauty in them, so much knowledge in them. Like you said, because I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And like you said, there's so much truth and knowledge in all the religions. But yeah, how they're being used is in a corrupt manner to control.
Yeah, very well said. Spirituality is eclecticism.
Yes.
And so we have to understand that these outer religions are exoteric in the way that they're taught, okay? And that doesn't, because there's an exoteric side to all these traditions and there's an esoteric side to all these religions. That's what I meant to say. So the exoteric refers to knowledge or teachings that are meant to be easily understood by everyone. It is public, straightforward, and practical, available to a wide audience. So this is for the layman. This is, for people who, just get the basics. And, a lot of people get the basics of these religions and then they just become faithful. They become believers rather than knowers and understanders. Right. They're not eclectic. They choose one of these religions and stick with them. And that's very, that everybody's having their own spiritual experience, but you're never going to truly develop yourself spiritually by sticking with one religion, exoterically especially. Because here's the thing. When you look at the middle of the table, the inner circle, this is dealing with the mythical. This is dealing with the allegorical. This is the esoteric. And so all these traditions that you're seeing in the middle, you can use these traditions to help you understand and appreciate the religions on the outer edge. And so these mystery schools, so mystery traditions are also mystery schools. These mystery schools, like you see, and I didn't put names, but so you're just going to have to, follow with me. So right there on the inner circle of Islam is Sufism. Sufism is a very beautiful science to help you understand the esoteric inner workings of the soul of Islam. And then if you go up from there, above that, above the heart with the wings, that's the symbol I'm talking about. But above that is this is the symbol. This is the rune. This is a very powerful rune. This is about the Yggdrasil tree in the rune tradition. And the rune tradition is to help us understand the Germanic or the Nordic traditions. And then if you go above that, you have the Kabbalistic tree of life. And this can help you understand the Jewish religion, the esoteric Jewish religion. And then if you go all the way down from there, you'll see the symbol for theosophy, which is the snake eating its tail, and the six-pointed star with the Ankh in the middle, and then the little swastika at the top. This is a very powerful symbol that can help us understand pretty much all these religions, and Hinduism, Christianity, Taoism. It can help us understand all these traditions. So it's a very powerful tradition. Then there's what is the Thelema? Thelema can help you understand all these traditions and way further back. It has a lot of ancient knowledge tied in with it. Also, the tarot deck, an amazing tradition that can help you understand anything, pretty much anything. It has a very wide range. It's every single card is like a book, and it can help you understand the Zodiac, and it can help you understand. We have to understand all these traditions are all tied in with each other, because it all goes back to what I was talking about with the ancient Egyptian hero cults, all these myths. It's all dealing with these celestial bodies. Yeah. It's just different, but I'll just go through a few more. You have the alchemy tradition. Alchemy obviously applies to everything. You have Rosicrucianism and Gnosticism, the crosses that you see, and those are tied in with Christianity as well, but they apply with all the other traditions as well. All these traditions are so beautiful, but the one that I have used the most, and I would say, without even being biased, is that the tradition of esoteric Freemasonry is the modern version of the ancient Egyptian science. It is the web that is interwoven through all these mystery traditions. And we're going to go on the next slide. I'm going to go into what these traditions really help us get to, because as you can see, right in the middle is truth. Mm-hmm. And so use whatever tradition you want to use. But just understand that these traditions were passed down by people who really cared for our sovereignty, for the future's sovereignty. And these people cared enough to put these traditions together, but also be aware that people also take these traditions and they bastardize them. The sorcerers use these through black magic, and they do all kinds of horrible things with these traditions. None of these traditions and religions as teachings are good or evil. They just are. They're
just
neutral.
are. Yeah.
That's right. And
it's how you use anything.
Right. And there's obviously I see some, there's definitely deception going on in a lot of the religions especially, but the real student in you is going to learn. I mean, if you understand natural law, you're going to know, using the trivium method, you're going to learn what makes sense and what doesn't. You're going to learn how to use that logical method of discernment. And, that's really what we have to be aware of in ourselves, is that our honesty and how we're learning these things is really what's going to take us home, or to the source, to freedom, to sovereignty, to evolution. And, essentially having, growing that agape love, the great cosmic love of the universe.
Yeah, no, that was very well said. Learning how to learn is a big deal. And I think it's often overlooked, learning how to learn, because we're not taught how to learn. We're taught how to obey.
Yeah.
So that's good. So, how does this, well, first you said there was more you wanted to show. I didn't want to get into the eschatology if you're not ready yet.
Oh no, we can go right into it. Okay. We can go right into it.
I just want to see how that relates to this, and then also how it relates back to natural law.
Yeah. So this is probably, dare I say, the biggest thing that anybody could ever truly go through, because this is your personal, this is everyone's personal journey to finding their care and raising raising spirit back into material. because, spirit is really nowhere to be found in this world.
Yeah.
Mentally. We are mental materialists collectively. And so eschatology, eschatos logy, that means the study of final things. And this is the study of the final events or final, the final time or the end of the time, or you can look at it as the Alpha and the Omega, the ending and the beginning, or the beginning and the ending. You can look at it as, what's the word I'm looking for? My brain's just not working at the moment. But the point is, it's about understanding that there's a cycle, and at the end of the cycle is where it begins, right? And so this is such a huge science and the reason it's so important to understand with the solar mythos is because the solar mythos is where this science got perfected. And it got perfected through Osiris. And Osiris is the sun. This is the ancient, this is the last solar deity that had the science of the sun. And obviously there's other solar deities that come after Osiris, but that's where the degradation begins because people started to literalize this science. So I'm going to try to paint the picture what I'm talking about before I dive deeper into this. So basically, I want people to think of the sun going through the months of the summer, and think of that as the living, okay, where everything is alive. And then the sun falls into fall. There's a reason for that, right? Because the sun is falling. And also think of the northern hemisphere of Earth. And the northern hemisphere, if you're above the equator, the sun dipping down into the southern hemisphere, that is the sun going down into darkness, down into a tomb, if you will. Okay, the sun is going to its quote-unquote death. And so what corresponds to that? Well, the correspondence would be that the trees, life, people are going, down to a state of being cold, losing heat, losing energy, a time where we start to, even hibernate. A lot of animals hibernate. Trees are bare. And, so everything is falling, and we're going into a tomb, and a tomb is autumn or autumn, right? So the sun is going into the tomb. And so now the sun is, going below the equator, below the equator, through fall down to the winter solstice. And this is where the sun goes to its quote-unquote death, right? And this is where the sun stops. It's at its lowest point in the south from our perspective on Earth. And then for 4 days following that, 3 days following that, the sun is basically staying at that very, very low point. And then on the 25th, the sun rises 1 degree north. And this would be considered conception, okay? And that conception is not just a literal thing that we relate to, but this is the conception of care. This is the beginning of care. Because remember, the sun is the soul. In Latin, sun means soul. So this is the journey of the soul, right? Through the underworld. And this is the right at the end time of the sun going down. It's waning. The sun is waning. It's going down. And so when the sun's going down to its quote unquote death, this is the end time of the cycle. This is the final moment of the cycle, or moments of the cycle. And so that's the same with us. So when we look at ourselves as living beings who are, operating in our R complex, or, just all survival all the time, we're just living, but we're not conscious, right? And so going down into this, like the sun going into the underworld, that's corresponding to us going through our journey through the shadow work, going through the trials and tribulations of waking up to a whole nother world we never thought we'd ever see, a dark side of reality, to see what we've become, to stare at the darkness right in its face, but then to realize, oh, I'm realizing my darkness of ignorance, but simultaneously I'm realizing the beauty of darkness, because this is the sacred feminine. And so we're going into the womb to be, reborn again. This is the womb. So we're going into a tomb, but also it's the womb. It's the cradle. This is the sacred mother cradle. And that's why it's a descent into this underworld. So this is the whole eschatology. So think about, look at these images, and you see this is the judgment hall. The judgment hall of Osiris sitting on the throne, or sitting on the square. And basically this is where the soul goes through the trials of Ma'at, to see if your heart weighs the same as the feather. And that feather, if you're familiar with the ostrich bird, what I find so insanely beautiful and weird is that the ostrich has all its feathers are the same exact size.
I did not know that.
So this represents truth, because it means that everything is measured perfectly. Like and it's also, this is also part of understanding the language of the birds, because it's a very high language. It's a very high nature language that we're talking about here. And so these scales, the light of the feather is phonetically the light of, have you raised your light internally? Does your heart, are you aligned to natural law yet? This is about, going through the trials of natural law. This is how it applies to natural law, because natural law is about sowing or reaping what you sow, right? So it's the law of consequentialism. And so
karma.
That's right, karma. Yeah. It's a karmic. This whole judgment hall is the science of karma. It's the science of whether or not you are aligned enough to raise up to have your what would be referred to as your second birth, or your going into the afterlife. And so what this means, there's so many layers to this, because it's your soul's journey first and foremost, but it's it's talking about the macrocosmic natural law, but it's also, symbolically talking about, going through this descent, like the sun, going through, the southern hemisphere, and then coming up again in the spring. But this science is all, this is about whether or not you as an individual have been honest with yourself, where your heart is aligned to that feather, to that light of Ma'at, because Ma'at means that which is straight. Ma'at means that which is correct and true and honest. And so that means if you are those things, and, obviously we're human, we can't be perfect, but we're giving our honest effort the best we can to go through this. And it's a constant thing. This judgment hall it's a never ending thing, because you're always measuring yourself against natural law. This is about conscience. Is what I'm doing correct, or is it wrong? And having the knowledge of the difference between right and wrong.
And going through that constant evolution.
That's right. And so that's what this judgment hall represents. And so then there's this, so you have Anubis, the dog-headed elemental power that is at the scales. And Anubis is the one who guides the dead through the trials, right? And because that's what a dog does. It's a guide. A guide has a sense. A guide knows it's natural, and plus it's man's best friend, right? But this is a jackal-headed being as well, and that's important because the jackal goes all the way back to the beginning of the totemic sociology. So then there's this being called Amit, and Amit is the crocodile being with the lion paws and the hippopotamus back legs, and this being represents what will devour us if we do not make it through. So this is the devourer of us if we have nothing to show, if we've not sown anything properly or with care. This Amit will devour us. It's like our ego, our lower self will devour us if we do not, and will make our lives worse if we do not get correct and bring that heart in alignment with that feather. And so there's so much to this judgment hall. But it's so ancient. It's so rich and so real. It's so if you learn the science behind it, and I recommend looking into the exoteric stories and bring the knowledge of the esoteric mystery traditions to this, so that way it will develop with you. And you as simultaneously developing you as a spiritual being. And however you do that, it's your journey. Your journey that's your personal journey, and however you do that is up to you, and it's completely your special experience. But these sciences were left by people who cared so much to preserve our responsibility to become conscious, because this is how we're going to reunite with Earth. And and this is something I've never heard anybody say, but eschatology is the result. I am really I really believe that eschatology is the result of beings who have fallen. It's a mechanism of nature that man can discover when man has fallen so far from spiritual essence or from spirituality. And that means that it's a way for us to turn ourselves around. That's what eschatology is about. It's about turning ourselves around to go back to reconnecting with this sacred father and the sacred mother, but understanding that we cannot reunite with the sacred father without going through the sacred mother, which is care, which is the moon. And so that's why the phases are the way they are. This is, I mean, what I showed everybody earlier with the hero cults, the stellar, lunar, and solar. This is the massive Holy Trinity. It's so grand. I don't know the right name to call it that. I'm just calling it the grand. Yeah. I mean, because it's so ancient and so huge.
It's so all encompassing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and we're all connected to it. Right. It's all in us. Yeah. All this information. And becoming conscious is how we're going to reunite with. See, we're living on Mother Earth. This is the Gaia. The Gaia is the nurturer that can have an infested mind of the people, who can destroy so much of the outer layer of this beautiful planet, this beautiful mother. And the way that the planets, because the planets, they're all connected. The planets, you could look at them as brothers and sisters, right? Yeah. You know, and so through us, we're a very interesting species, and through us, we can destroy ourselves and we can harm this planet pretty well, or we can take back our sovereignty and reunite with this planet through consciousness, through totemism.
Through truth.
Through truth, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Truth is ultimate.
Yeah, ultimate. Oh, this is like I can literally feel my heart opening as literally as you talk about this. It's so deep and it's so profound, and when you say it's in you, you can feel it in you. Yes. And you can kind of feel it starting to open up, because it's like the knowledge was there, it just was not awakened. You know what I mean?
That's absolutely correct.
To get the information, it just starts to awaken in you. I want to open it up to any questions or comments, because this is some really deep stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Soul.
Oh, my goodness.
Speaking of the Soul, we have Soul right
here. Yeah. I'm glad you shouted my the real meaning of my name out there,
There you go.
Oh, yeah, Soul. That's cool. Yeah. That's awesome. Sure. Beautiful.
Beautiful is the word of the day with this podcast episode. So, first of all, when you got to the study of final things slide, and you started going through the science, what you call the science of it, and then you got to this trial, the ancient trial where and it all culminated in the journey of humanity, or the journey of even just intelligent beings, right? And if you're intelligent beyond a certain point and you come into culture that it has been tainted, and it's got its closeness to God has been pushed farther and farther away for so many years, and you go through this, awakening after awakening after awakening after awakening process that we go through just growing up. I thought that was very beautiful, and I just want to first, before I get to my question, kudos on the way that all of this came out and the way that Cynthia, you were bouncing off the energy, and it was great. It was great. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. My question is, and it was a few slides back, but you don't have to, return it. I'm just trying to think of the right words for it. How did you come to your personal conclusion about the timeline of humanity, and especially some of these ancient structures, these physical structures that represent these concepts, as well as serve as great technologies, maybe not. How did you, come to like, these people probably started the project and then these people probably finished it? And because that was really interesting. I hadn't heard that before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is a very great question, and I can only answer it the best that I can, because we have to understand there's a limited amount of knowledge, but it can be known. And the reason that it can be known is because if we study the epochs of time of the glacial period, which I talked about earlier, being this 26,000 year cycle, this is something you can actually study in the Yuga cycles. And the Yuga cycles, this is a part of the Hindu tradition. And the Hindu cycles definitely preserve that science. And but if you go back far enough, back into the see, people look at humans as just beginning like 6,000 years ago. And even through evolution, which I don't, especially through Darwinistic evolution, I don't take to that that belief. I think that Darwin had some very interesting points, and I'm not trying to completely dismiss his work, but we have to understand, if you study the archaeology and you go back far enough into the Paleolithic era, which is when humans, people of that time were just starting to make tools from what we've found, again, through archaeology. This is where tool making starts to take place. And the polishing, we have to understand, Paleolithic is, we can relate this to the time period when humans were making things like axes or sharp weapons, or sharp, carving tools, without polishing them. But the Neolithic era, which follows the Paleolithic, this is where we start to see the polishing of the tool making. And so then we start to see that these people also have funerary rites, because we can see it through, the writings on the wall. We can see that, these people cared about their tools. They carved their tools, but also they, or carved their tools on the wall, but also carved their tools, polished them. And they started to venerate in these tools. And, this is so this is pretty much pre-totemic. So then totemic is, this is where the hero cults begin. This is where we start to see that these tools are being venerated as, like a double-headed axe or a single-headed axe, which is actually referred to as the Netcher, the NTR. And this means, you could say God or elemental power. You could call it natural law. And so if you pay attention to the tool making and the weaponry, so the axe comes first, and then you could say, because through, the records and the drawings on the wall, and if we're staying honest with the archaeology, the time periods, where people are not really called humans, they're drawing things, crescents. They're drawing, or they're making, bows, and this relates this relates to the lunar. So we're going into the lunar phase. So we're going from axe to lunar, which is bow, and then we go, or like the bow and the arrow. But then we get into the solar, which is where we get the arrow and the sword. The sword starts to evolve at that point, and so we can see how these things, the weaponry or the tool making aligns with the mythos. And we can also see if you're paying attention to the tribes and you're paying attention to the stories and the myths coming from Africa, especially along the Nile Valley, and how that evolves as people came from South Africa moving north, because they first started in as far as what I believe, based on, the research I've done, we had people that came from Southern Africa that evolved upward to ancient Egypt. And during that time, this is where the evolution of the mythos is beginning. And so, moving up the Nile to ancient Egypt, or ancient Kemet, however you want to call that, this is where, we started to see that these people were developing their mythos. They were developing these sciences to help us understand when to plant and when to harvest, to help us understand how to venerate in the night sky. And then, of course, all this information gets so messy through Babylon. When this information starts to go more in the Middle East area, and it's taken there, that's where everything gets turned around, and people think that ancient Egypt comes after Babylon, and so it's there's a lot of gray area. But if you stay true to the mystery traditions that are passed down, because this is where we're going to really flesh a lot of this stuff out. Stay true to the mystery traditions. Stay true to the symbolism. Stay true to the myths, exoterically and esoterically, and there you will start to find where this timeline. And the timeline is it's very difficult to keep track of, because there's so much ambiguity, because we're dealing with so much time that's been lost. We're dealing with so much of the mythos that has been corrupted. And, so we have to stay true to the symbolism, stay true to the oral traditions, stay true to the best you can. And also just remember, math doesn't lie. Sacred geometry doesn't lie. That's why those pyramids are so valuable. And this is what I broke down in Earthbrain 3, my presentation that I just gave. So, there's a lot more that I could say, but
check it out. So you would love it. I watched part of the Earthbrain. You would love that series.
I sure will.
Yeah.
I sure
awesome.
will.
So hopefully, Saul, that answers some of your question at least. It's difficult material, and I definitely recommend anybody look into General Drayson, his work, very old work back in the 1800s, because this man cared so much about time periods, epochs of time, and how to discover that time, how to discover the time periods.
Nate,
and it is very fascinating.
Word up. Would you say that the traditions, at least around totem and pre-totem, are mostly all centered around agriculture and like maybe hunting or stuff like that?
Well, it's some gray area in that for me, because I could say,
like versus like, telepathy and magic and that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I
circle around like agriculture and
for sure. Yes, I do believe that these people were very, very telepathic in the sense that they weren't using, language with, words necessarily. They were pointing. They knew how to use their mind. They knew how to be still in nature. They knew how to read nature. And this is, something that we're starting to kind of remember now. We're starting to kind of remember that we have this power. And the totemic people, they obviously human beings are a very interesting species, because if we believe that we came, the whole coming out of Africa story, as a whole, human species, which I tend to take that more than others. I'm still open to it, because I'm still open to other ideas, because I do find that, there's a lot of gray area that you're working with. But I will say that if we do stick to that story, these people lived closer to the equator. And so right. I would say we didn't really need to hunt for food. Food was all around us. It was
all abundant. Right. Yeah.
That right. And so
can I just to add a quick side note to what you just said, according to Lloyd Pye and a few other geneticists, our mitochondrial DNA actually does trace back about 250,000 years into what the Sumerians would call the Adamu, which is sub-Saharan Africa. And I don't think the Sahara was there at the time, as big as it is now. But that region under the Sahara Desert in Africa near the equator is where apparently our mitochondrial DNA, which is only passed through the mother, the sperm does not contain mitochondrial DNA. So it's only passed through the mother. And according to the fossils and the DNA testing and stuff that they were able to do with that, once that technology made its way through our modern sciences, that's where they trace the human being back to, is right in smack dab in the middle of Africa.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard so many different stories that where these origins come from. But I mean, I've even seen that human beings were go back as far as 1 million years. So I mean, yeah. I mean, if you look at the archaeology, we see, the thing is, we have to understand that our human story is not what we've been taught, and even I think a lot of people have a limited view of human beings. I mean, to think about how many hundreds of thousands and millions of years it would take to evolve. If you even took to that story of evolution, as far as the Darwinistic evolution theory, it would take so long for that to happen. But also, as human beings, there's been so much learning that we have done over so many hundreds of thousands of years. And, we can get into the debate of it, and I'm not even going to go there, but I'm just saying what I've heard. I've heard that, human beings, it dates back to over 1 million years. So, it's
could be, bro. I don't, yeah, could be. I mean, yeah. If the what do they call it? The Anunnaki, if there are other beings that may or may not have helped in the creation of human beings or whatever, who knows, lived apparently and ruled over regions of this plantation that they made for tens and tens of, and maybe hundreds of thousands of years per person, then who knows? I mean, it's very possible the Earth is hella old. So
Sure.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, humanity could, fall into cycles just like everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're only looking maybe at one cycle or two cycles, and it could be way more than we ever thought, especially since when you really think about time, it is not linear.
Right. That's right. But, I just want to make mention, I want to be very clear when I say that these beings, the moon, the sun, all the stars, the planets, these are the extraterrestrials that I think we should really pay a lot more attention to, because this is where our sovereignty's at. I mean, we can talk, I'm always open to talk about anything. But I also would say that if people are not willing to go further back into ancient Egypt and see the science of these, these elemental powers, to see how it's parallels to so many other traditions that come after it, then we get stuck in a perpetual system of trying to argue something that we may never get to prove. People will say that they've proven all this stuff, but again, these are things that we can see, and I think and these are things we can actually observe. And I'm not trying to sound like that only material can prove everything, or through the five senses. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm just saying there's so much more that we need to be careful with how we're looking at this information. How much of it do we believe based on actual real evidence, something that we can actually prove ourselves, or to ourselves, more importantly, or is it just something that we've just kind of heard about? How do we apply it? See, application is so important. That's why the mystery traditions are so vital, because they help us apply this information and stay true. This is about ma'at. And so when you learn the way that you build through ma'at, this is natural law. And so if ma'at is the guide, Anubis is the guide, but ma'at is the one who shows us the straight line, and getting away from the crooked line through life, because there's a lot of crooked things going on in this world, and we have to get around that,
Right.
So
Ma'at is also she's also like the mother, and she's the one who holds the scales, right?
That's right.
Mother and your heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah, true.
And
Yeah.
it's also, I feel like there's really big hints in the language, in the green language. Like you mentioned, the planets and the stars are like the Elohim, and then you look at the word elemental, right? Again, there's the El, and then mental. It's like all back to the first law of Hermeticism, of mentalism.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's also like untapped green language in the Hebrew language, which I'm familiar with because I grew up in Israel. And I think I sent you an email about it, and I'm still pondering it myself. But for instance, like even the word ma'at, in Hebrew, there's a word me'at, which sounds very similar. And it has the letter mem, Ain, and then tet, and it means like little. It means like when you say like, okay, you only want a little bit, so you say you want me'at, yeah, which I find interesting, like in relation to like the lightness, right, of like the feather of ma'at, and also like if you think about the word bliss, it's like be less. It's like have little.
Yeah.
So there's
Right.
like the lightness aspect to it. And
Yeah,
one
green
thing really
language.
profound. Yeah.
Go
One thing
for it.
really profound I found about like the word for religion in Hebrew, it's dat. And there's another very similar word in Hebrew, which is knowledge, or like awareness. It has multiple meanings depending on the context, but it's actually da'at. So like your knowledge or your awareness or your consciousness, maybe you could call it da'at. And then religion is dat. So it's like da'at without the ayn, which ayn in Hebrew is actually the eye.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So
man.
religion, like that religion in Hebrew, it literally in the language itself, you can see that it's the consciousness without the eye, which can be like the eye of Horus or the third eye.
Yes.
So I think it's really fascinating.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
And yeah, I definitely want to do a podcast in the future on green language. It's very fascinating, very interesting. There's a lot to be learned there. I just have a quick closing question for you, because I've just seen so many different posts and videos and stuff about it. Tomorrow being 12/12 of the year 24, which is 2 more 12s. What and they're saying, it's supposed to be, and a big deal as far as, consciousness, spirituality, and, being a portal opening. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because 1111 is, that is the magical number of synchronicity. And so obviously any number doubled, you can look at it as a synchronicity. But also this is pretty powerful what you're saying now that I'm thinking about it, because you can look at it as 12 and 12 is 24.
Right.
And so you can look at, we're in the year 24, so it's 24/24. But also one of the things that I've been talking about so heavily in my work is the symbol of the letter X. And the X is the 24th letter of the alphabet.
Okay.
And so the alphabet, this, if anybody has ever studied gematria, you'll understand that each letter is significant to the number that it is numerically. So the letter X being 24 is so significant to what's been going on this year, because X, think about like how popular Twitter X has become. Think about everything with Elon Musk, the SpaceX, just all his, different, all the different avenues of the X. And, but also just remember that X marks the spot.
I was just about to say that. X marks the spot. Yeah.
And when this growing power is happening, I find it very interesting because, X is also part of understanding Osiris, the X. And so this is about, we're starting new, fresh in the 2000s. So it's 24. We're in the year 24. So this is the year of X. And so was last year, because 25 is the, last year was 23. And so 2 and 3 make 5. 5 is the square, the 4 points, and the middle point in the middle. That's the X. So we've had 2 years of the X. And so, what you're saying with 12/12 being 24, and so we have the double X. And I find that very, very interesting in the sense that, the double X is akin to or analogous to the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And also think about 24 is the eve of December's 25th. It's the only day of the whole year that is an eve of a big day, other than, the eve of the new year. But of the whole year, you have 24 as the Christmas Eve. And so you have this X, meaning what we were just talking about with eschatology. It is the Alpha and the Omega. It is the beginning and end of something. So we're going through the end of an era right now. We're about to begin this on the December 25th. There are things that are going to be happening because of this numerology, or what's associated with this numerology. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm prophesizing, or not prophesizing.
I know what you're saying, but no, literally, I can feel it in the air. I can feel it in the ether. Like it's just, everything feels just different to me. Like I can, how you just feel like you're on the precipice of something very strongly inside, and it's just been growing. So yeah, that's why I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I'm like, something's brewing. I'm not sure what, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, just pay attention to where we're at on the Zodiac. We are in we're in Sagittarius. And so we're going into we're going to be going into Capricorn. And so this is the time, the last house of fall. And so, we're going through a fall of ourselves, and a fall of an empire also.
Yes.
There's a renewal coming. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, it's definitely a good thing for those who are going more into the spiritual realm. That's a great thing. That's what we need. We like people like you on the front lines talking about natural law. We need more people to step up, who have that knowledge, to step up and actually start teaching this. And so seeing more people, that's a great sign. We have to, really step it up. Every year I'm always telling myself I'm going to be better than I was last year.
Right.
And so it's, that's part of the development of self, is just, continuing to develop. That's the spiral symbol, always developing all the way to the center, as close as you can get. And it's a very beautiful thing, but also there's a lot of things that we got to deal with in order to really turn this around, turn this enslavement, this just absolute, corrupt system. We have to turn it. We have to be the healers that we wish to see.
Yes.
Or be the healing that we wish to see in the world, right?
Absolutely. Yep. I preach that all the time. You want to see change, be it. You want to see love, be it.
That's right.
You want to see kindness and care, be it. So that was, I think, the perfect way to close this. This has been awesome. Like, I feel like I'm on a high right now. So this has been awesome. I am so thankful that you came on the podcast, and I definitely want to bring you back in the future, because there's so many more things I want to talk about with you. You are just a wealth of knowledge. So I thank my guests, people that, showed up for the live. This will be online very soon, as always. But give them your website one more time as well, Nate.
CubbyWhole.com. That's CubbyWhole.com. And again, that's where you can find all my work for the most part. And Douglas Martin and Brandon Martin are on there too. And you can also find my outcasting show, my video show is on there. And this has been just a wonderful time that you have allowed us to have, and I really, really appreciate it, Cynthia. you're doing great work, and I'm so happy for you. And I'm so just, I have a very deep appreciation for people like you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And as always, I encourage you to visit his site, visit my site, affirmlifedaily.com. I added a link to his website on my resources page, so you can find that there as well. There's a ton of information on the website. Links to podcasts, videos, documentaries, books, a wealth of information there, as well as links to my podcast. You can go to affirmlifedaily.com, follow on social media at Affirm Life Daily. And I leave you all tonight with grace, gratitude, and love. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay.